Do these things work? Well, some say that they do, and some say that they don't. The question is, what makes the difference? Why don't we talk about that? Well, let me say right from the start that I am not a wildlife biologist, but I am a veterinarian, and I spent my whole career observing many different kinds of animals, interpreting their behavior, and making decisions based on what I perceive. And the stakes can be high, often life and death, and usually that's for the animals, but occasionally, sometimes it's for me. And one of the common mistakes I think that we fall into as human beings is thinking that animals should think the way that we do. Well, they don't, and they shouldn't, because it wouldn't be good for their survival. Each animal has its own niche and its own way of seeing the world. And if we keep that in mind, we can do a better job of understanding animals and why they're doing what they do. And hey, it might even help us understand each other. So when we go out into the woods and make our setup for the deer, which includes a mock scrape, a licking branch, and these scent drippers, we're really going to approach that situation from two different perspectives, mine and the deer's. And really the question to answer is, what are the deer looking for out of this thing? I think we tend to overthink it. The answer should be obvious, and we can see it in this video. And if we slow that down, we can see right there, that's it. That's all that matters to that buck. He wants to find a doe in estrus. The scrape and that licking branch are a means to an end. If that buck is already engaging a live doe somewhere, he has no need of a scrape. So if nothing is coming to the setup, it may simply be that the buck is already with the doe somewhere. And it may be that the scrape is in the wrong place and at the wrong time. If you're not seeing larger bucks, it may be that there's scent checking from a distance. It's those small bucks that tend to barrel into the setup. But the more mature bucks, the larger bucks, are probably downwind in more secure cover. It doesn't mean that they won't come up, but I think a lot of times they are further away from the scrape, and you might want to keep that in mind for your stand placement. Well, from my perspective, I know what I want out of the scent dripper setup. First, I don't want a negative outcome. I don't want that scent to spook the deer or to cause them to avoid the area. Now, thankfully, none of the products that we've used so far have seemed to alarm the deer, and they have actually sniffed the ground quite a bit. Secondly, I want the scent to increase the activity in the area and hopefully actually draw the deer to that specific spot. And if a deer comes right to that spot and stops, well, you really can't ask any more than that out of the scent dripper. Third, and I believe this to be the real function of the scent dripper, is that I want it to establish the scrape. If the scent draws younger bucks and does to the scrape and they leave their own scent in the dirt or on the branch, I can't improve on that. The dripper probably helps a little after that to keep things interesting, but if it's in the right location, I believe that the animals themselves will create enough scent to keep the situation going. So what is the right location? And I think this is about the most important aspect of setting up a mock scrape with a dripper. I believe that the best places for a scent dripper are travel routes, not destination areas. I know that any setup can work in any place at any time for whatever reasons, because they're animals and it's woods and life can be kind of random. But I'm talking about trying to achieve the highest possibility for success. Because remember, I don't want a buck with a doe, I want a buck looking for a doe. So the travel corridors, small openings, pinch points, secure areas between bedding and feed sources are optimum locations. For example, Scent Dripper 3 was located just a few yards away from where that doe was bred earlier in this video, but it is more of a open hardwood corner that the bucks will push the does into, a destination spot for the purpose of breeding. So most of the activity on this scrape was at night. It was smaller bucks, and interest was more sporadic, and it virtually stopped once that the scent dripper went empty. Now, let's contrast that with Scent Dripper 2. That setup was a natural travel route around a pond, and there was a daily movement of does walking from the feeding area down to their bedding location. They were attracted to the site, They left their scent and it was established as an active scrape. And as a result, there was a tremendous amount of daylight buck activity. Just take a look at this. Bucks, even bigger bucks, were still using that scrape long after the bottle dried up. And I think that's the outcome that we want for any one of these setups. Consider this mock scrape located in a pinch point between two bedding areas. There wasn't even a scent dripper on it. Just a little human help here from my son, to help it along and help it get going. The bucks kept that scrape alive all on their own because it was in the right spot. And incidentally, that spot is a lousy spot most of the year. It lights up every autumn when the rut kicks in and the bucks start moving through the area looking for does. And that brings me to some thoughts about timing. I am changing my mind. Based on what I saw in these experiments and the comments that I've received on the videos, I would say that earlier is better than later. And that makes sense because as the rut kicks in, the bucks simply don't need the scrapes as much. But if they're established early, they will know where to come back to when they're in search of another doe. I know there can be some real variability depending upon where you are in the country, but I believe that opening up a scrape in the right place early in the season, say late September to mid-October, might work the best because we know that these deer use the licking branches year-round. So if we have them established and then start an early drip of maybe just simple urine, that might yield the best results. And I think these licking branches are actually quite important because if you get them set up and established in the right place, my goodness, you will see buck activity on them for generations to come, year after year. And you've put that licking branch in a good spot when you find that the bucks have opened up the scrape well before you even get there. So I want to talk about some practical aspects of the scent dripper setup. First off, I do not practice meticulous scent control. It just doesn't seem to be necessary, but it does seem to be a good idea to keep the scent dripper up and above the animal where it cannot reach it. Sometimes I'll hang the scent dripper in a tree above the scrape, or more and more I find myself just simply stringing a cord between two trees and using that to elevate the scent dripper. When I look for a site to make the scrape, I like it to be slightly raised. I like it to be free of roots if I can, or I'm going to make it free of roots, where I can stir up that topsoil and where the deer can paw in it really unimpeded. It doesn't seem to really matter what the licking branch is, although in my area it seems that the deer prefer oak or ash, and I'll use those if I can. But I'll use a cord and bring that branch down to about head to chest high. I want it low enough so that the younger deer can put their scent on it and get it marked up. And now I am kind of particular about keeping my scent off the end of that branch because they're going to be sniffing that directly. I don't want me to be there for that. Another thing I like to make sure of is that there is plenty of room for that buck to maneuver around because he wants to come in there and do his thing and he doesn't want to contend with brush when he does that. And finally, I would say that whatever you decide to put in your scent drippers is your choice. I don't think it takes too much. I just think it takes some sort of urine, neutral-based attractant scent, and once those other deer start showing up and leaving their scent, they'll take care of the rest. I hope this video has given you some food for thought and some ideas about how you might modify your own approach. Scent drippers are certainly not necessary, but they might be a tool that you can use to increase your chances for success. Well, thinking about this has given me some really neat ideas for what I'm going to try to do next year, and I'd love to hear what your reactions are. I thank you for watching this video, and if you liked it, please consider subscribing to the channel or sharing the video with somebody you think might like to interact with these ideas. So thank you very much, and take care.